Gone are my blues and gone are my tears. I've got good news to shout in your ears. The long-lost dollar has come back to the fold. With silver you can turn your dreams to gold.
$1 million.
We're in the money, we're in the money. We've got a lot of what it takes to get along. We're in the money, the sky is sunny.
My mom's a teacher.
And your dad?
He's a liar.
You mean he's a lawyer?
What her lawyer describes as her brainwash. Bob Blazier,
A liar.
one of O.J. Simpson's defense attorneys. Very disturbing.
He would need so much deprogramming and so much mental health work, and it's just scary.
It just scared the hell out of you.
Helped her.
One lie at a time.
And others.
You really worry about either them starting
Liar.
As instruments of Satan.
But then I guess we wouldn't get all that free publicity, would we?
Now wait a minute.
And they worship a different Lord. But we also have a prophet. Perhaps you've heard of him? Little guy called Jesus.
Several state and federal agencies are keeping an eye on the Fence Lake Group. They tell CBS Southwest News if they receive hard evidence that laws are being broken, they will take action.
Now sin.
One lie at a time.
The true victim
Is my client.
It's a bizarre religious community. They say they had no money, no...
Now.
Any change, mister? Absolutely. Could you spare some?
Yes, I could.
Just imagine, you're growing up in the U.S., right? I mean, that's the dream, where we have freedom.
Now sin.
Now, Maura was one of the first to sign up, and she brought her 12-year-old daughter, Rebecca, with
She
her.
doesn't quite live up to the same standards, does she?
My mother was judged because she committed adultery.
Perhaps we've unfairly characterized.
Is my client.
So in fairness, let's show a sample of her work.
You're the victim here, driven into the arms of another man.
7.
Yeah, whatever.
And I didn't know. I didn't know what it meant.
How convenient.
And I was too afraid to ask.
Well, isn't that special?
It was me.
A liar.
That person ended up being my mother. I was accused of adultery, which meant that I put adultery in first place in my life. And I felt condemned. I felt like it was a kid's playhouse. And I felt like forsaken. Eventually, my stepfather told my mother to leave. I wanted back in the adultery. I still was under that mindset, adultery.
Now, whether she wanted that, that's the question in that we're examining right here, right now. Because God finally pinpointed her on certain points in her life
adultery.
To the point to where she wouldn't say no to those things, and she would go out, and she would even use men in our own midst for her own devices. And we're talking about where she would be masturbating daily. I couldn't satisfy her sexually. And so it came to the point to where if there was anything that we could do to help her, we wanted to help her. But if you're a person that won't change and tell yourself no, then what do you do? What does a husband do when a wife wants to go out with other guys? What do you do? Well, it came to the point where correction was needed. Okay? And she was corrected, and she was told that, okay, you're doing all these things, now what are you going to do about it? She made a confession, and there's many written confessions of her that she was doing all these things, and so it was decided that, well, you're just going to have to leave. And as a husband, I thought to myself, how can I live with this when this is going on and there's no change going on?
Let them go. Especially if you know you done everything you can do, you done sat around and been the best man you could be, and they still want to go, let them go.
Whatever they wanted after, they'll see what they had in the minute, but by then it's going
too late. Because you'll sit there and you'll go, because half these people you be sitting around crying about and worry about 2-3 years from now, you ain't going to even remember their last name. How many times you done seen folks somewhere, you be like, what the hell was I thinking? I done been there, I be like, what was wrong with me? What was I going through? I must have been lonely as hell to hook up with you.
Was that she ended up staying in the camp by the mercies of God.
Maura says her worst punishment was being locked in a windowless shed for 10 weeks with only stale peanut butter sandwiches.
And she went back to what we call it was a clubhouse built by myself, Jim and Deborah's children, and my other boy was involved in that. So the three of us and myself had built this clubhouse. And let me tell you a little bit about the camp. The camp was in an immaculate shape. All the houses were in good shape. The clubhouse was an immaculate clubhouse. I mean, I even had conduit electricity on the first story of the clubhouse and the second story. So, and it was carpeted. It was totally closed in. It was all new material that I had gotten from jobs that I had done. And we actually had the building inspectors in that camp at least 6 times a year, because we were working on a barracks, we were working on the big house, we had a little schoolhouse that we worked on. They were there continually. They knew about the clubhouse. We had built a shop in the back under inspection. Everything we did was up to par, and everybody knew what was going on there. The officials knew what was going on. It was in the open. We weren't living under a basket. The officials of that city knew exactly what we were up to, and it was being inspected. So like I told you, at least 6 times a year they would show up there, and I was the one dealing with them. But at any rate, as you can see, it wasn't what we would call a shed. It wasn't musty. It wasn't like dark and dreary. No, not at all. That place was actually used as one of our first what we would call service places, where we serve people coffee and donuts early in the morning. So you see, the place was frequented and trafficked.
Maura says her worst punishment was being locked in a windowless shed for 10 weeks with only stale peanut butter sandwiches.
Very afraid.
So she chose that she wanted to stay. She actually felt that she wanted to try to change. She had something in her, a little bit of gumption that said, hey, maybe I can change my life. Maybe I can change this lifestyle. Maybe I can overcome this becoming sin. But instead, okay, she went back there under those beliefs that she could maybe do something with her life, and God could deal with her, and God could like correct her, and she was going to let God deal with her heart. So during that time that she was back there, and I don't really know the length of time, but it wasn't very long, she was wanting to let God deal with her, and there was a time when we felt like, maybe we could make this thing work. Maybe our marriage could actually work, because God could make a marriage work. But that was the big problem with us. We couldn't get along. Because our natures were different, but God could make it work if He wanted to. Because I did marry her because when I became a Christian, I felt like this was the thing I should do. You just don't, you try to make things work. And so she went back there to get herself corrected, to get herself humbled. And God, it was a sweet thing. It was a good thing. It was something that God wanted her to get through, that she could see herself and she could really come to some really good changes in her life and overcome those sins and come forward in God and be able to become part of what God wanted her to do. Okay? This is what God wanted. And
now, excuse me, but one thing that we want to mention here, and it's been completely misconstrued by the mainstream media and by Maura herself, is that she was forced to live in the shed, that she was locked in the shed, that she had an inadequate diet, that she had no water, that she had no electricity, that she had no bathroom, that she had no place to bathe for 6 months. Now, this is what she said on the Dr. Phil show.
There was a shed in the backyard. I was ordered to move into that shed. There were no windows in the shed. It was full of mildew, and you couldn't stand upright. No bath, no shower for 6 months. I was excommunicated.
window in the shed, there was no light. Now that we know is a lie because there was a very large front window in the shed. As he said, there was also electricity, carpeting, insulation, and the place was built in such a way that it was not torn down or ordered torn down by the building inspectors who frequented the property. The other factor here that we want to make mention of is that Maura chose to go to the shed because we had put her originally in the chop shop, which was the large shed building next door, which was a metal building. And in that facility, there was running water, hot and cold. There was a bathroom. There was a place for sleeping. There was a telephone service, 2 lines, and there was also a door that opened up onto the alley that she could have walked out any time. And so she chose to first initially live in that. Then because we still had ongoing construction, she chose to facilitate herself in what she calls the shed for the short duration of time, which was between 5 days and 2 to 3 weeks. Now, during that time, she has expanded that to be 6 months in her mind. She has grossly exaggerated the conditions, and even the peanut butter sandwiches, which the women who were in that situation at that time were given, were their choice. So we see here there's been a lot of adding to, a lot of exaggeration, and a lot of accusation. So what do you say on that?
Well, I say that in that whole camp that we had, you pretty much had the liberality to go where you wanted to in that camp. She, on a daily basis, was anywhere in that camp doing different odd jobs that she herself wanted to do. She, of course, decided to go back there herself instead of leaving the camp, like I said originally, because she wanted God to do something in her life. And she thought maybe she could get God to do something in her life by restricting herself or let's say, like humbling herself before God. And that's really what was going on. And the facility was very good. It wasn't bad at all. Actually, the shop that was right side by side with the clubhouse was brand new. The bathroom was brand new. She had electric heater in the clubhouse. She had a wood stove. She was allowed to do cooking. She was allowed to keep warm. She was allowed to get water. She was allowed to go to the bathroom. It was her free will. Nobody disturbed any of that. Nobody came back there and gave her orders on what to do and not to do. She was at her liberality to do pretty much what she wanted to. As a matter of fact, more than most of us, because in our structure, in the way that we lived, we gave orders. We told people what to do and not to do. And of course, there's nothing matter with that. That's just how life is, Somebody's got to be the boss. Somebody's got to be told what to do. Correct? Isn't that the way life really is in the world, and as well as Christianity, And so she actually had a pretty good life back there as far as I saw it. She saw me every day. I saw her every day. She saw her children. It was a matter of her wanting to divorce herself from the activities of the camp so she could get herself right. See? That's the truth of it. It wasn't a matter of her being put out or put out there and, oh, you're such a nasty person and we hate you. No, we were all hoping and praying for her to come through this, to get herself right with God. That's the concern. But you see, instead of her taking the correction and the humility that she had gained, instead she turned it around, considered herself bigger than God, that she was going to correct God, that she was going to take control over everything, that she didn't need correction, that she was above all this when God wanted to humble her. And as a Christian, you know that God takes you through humblings. He takes you through times when you need your arrogance knocked down, when you need to walk low. Don't you know that is true Christianity? So, at any rate, she did not accept the corrections that she actually wanted to put on herself. And then when she actually left the camp on her own and decided that she needed to go out into the world, and this happened a couple times, but when she left the camp and decided to go on her own, she actually came into contact with other people and told her that you don't have to put up with this.
$1 million.